Hey there. Hey there. Good morning. Well, afternoon for
Hello,
you, I
hello.
guess.
Yes,
How you
yes,
doing?
yes, it's afternoon. Yes. I'm great. I'm great.
It looks like a little bit of a beard trim since we last saw you, maybe. You're looking a little trimmed up there. That's a good sign. The barber shops are opening
Vietnamese
clean.
guy. No, that's Vietnamese guys in DC, you know. Everything is still called keep in this regards, that's why.
All right. So for the last two shows, one you were racing on a plane and you talked to us from an airport terminal on your way to DC. Last week you were in a meeting. I'm not even sure I'm allowed to say where you were, but can you tell us anything about those two meetings? Is there anything you can tell us about where you were and what was going on?
That was in relation to sanctions. Yes,
Okay.
the first one was in DC, and the second one was in London. And yeah, unfortunately, that was the type of meeting when you can never guess when that would happen, and you cannot
Yeah.
say, I have another appointment. Please move it half an hour later. That's unfortunately was not the case. Yeah, but
Well, would you understand that?
I'm very much sorry for this. Yeah.
Is there anything you can tell us about the outcome of these meetings, even if, it was positive or it was neutral or it was negative? Is there any details you can give us?
No, they all were very positive, and I cannot give you all the details at the moment. That would soon be public, but in general, we were talking about the sanctions policy. I am advocating a lot that sanctions should not be a mere punishment, that it should be a policy tool, and because punishment is something that you usually apply via court decision. And sanctions is something that one government is telling to an individual, look, that we don't like what you guys are doing. That's why we don't want you on our territory or have business in my country and whatever. But if you do this and that, uh, you can continue. And right now, all the sanctions are structured like a punishment, but there is no encouragement of what this individual should actually do. And this is something that I really want to change. And that's why I'm shuttling between different European and American capitals to get on the common grounds in this regards. And so that would be implemented, and that there would be some prime case examples that we actually achieved our objectives.
I've been following you on Twitter and you just, oh shoot, what did I do? Where did it go? You just put something on Twitter about a linguist. I clicked away, so I don't have it in front of me. But you talked about a linguist on Twitter in your last post before you joined us. And she's talking about what should Russia be like? What's the future, which is very much what you just said. Do you want to talk about that linguist tweet and why you think it's so important for us to be talking about the future instead of just where things are with Ukraine today?
No, it is very important. And this is a continuation. We were having on our TV channel Ultra yesterday. We had our leading sociologist. His name is Lev Gudkov. He is the chairman of Levada Center, which is the leading Russian sociological outlet. And he was saying that we have these protest groups in Russia, which are actually ready to rebel. They actually to move forward, but they currently do not see their political representation. And it's pretty hard for them to get associated with the exiled liberals for a certain reason. Most importantly, that those liberals are too much associated with 1990s and the chaos of those years. People don't want to go back in those 90s. From another side, there's two major nucleuses of people. One is more liberal, urban population, and another is pretty distressed and frustrated population of small rural areas, and those who lost their jobs recently, and who really suffer of because of everything that's going on. And actually, that's that's the group of people who is the main donors of victims for this war, because that's where Putin is recruiting his army from. And these people, they want to see more somebody really associated with some social programs, with the protective measures. So it could politically, it could be either left or right, but socially, it should be somebody who is on more or less on the left side. And there is no such proposition. And we were discussing what the politician should approach those people with. And Gudkov was talking a lot about this vision for future. And I totally agree with him. That's my common message, that I'm trying to bring more and more examples from different sides of political spectrum, people about who talking in the way that I have a dream, who has a dream, and that this dream is appealing to the population. But recently, yesterday, our conclusion with Lev Gudkov was even simpler than that. The first conclusion, the first condition for such a politician should be this politician should really love Russian people, no matter what they do. It's like parents love their kids. Those kids can sometimes commit crimes, but you should nevertheless love them. Otherwise, they would never follow, they would never listen to you, because it should be clear that you want to do good for them. And right now, a lot of Russian opposition folks, they're talking in the way that, that's so awful, Russian people are awful, we don't know what to do with the country, it has to be broken apart, they have to be punished, that Ukrainians should kill as many Russians as possible, and obviously that does not generate a lot of public appeal with those who are still in Russia.
Yeah. So just to be clear, when you talk about opposition people, you're talking about opposition outside of Russia, and it's not empowering people who might oppose the war inside of Russia, among other things, correct?
Yeah, mostly they are already outside Russia, but there are still some people inside Russia, but still they're talking in the same fashion, and then that's really bad. It's that is not getting the message across to ordinary Russians, and that makes them feel them pretty abandoned, and make them deaf to any of the absolutely right phrases that the opposition may have to say.
Is it fair to say that Russians inside of Russia are not feeling that love from their own country or their own government as well? I mean, my sense is if you're Russian, you have this sort of ideological sense of love for Russia, but I've never really had the sense that Russians ever felt particularly loved as individuals as Russians inside of Russia.
I totally agree with you. They feel like they're orphans. And I think that all the crimes that we actually see in Bucha in Ukraine and in other locations in Ukraine, that's actually the very origin of where it's coming from. It's when the person is not loved, when the person is felt abandoned, when the person feels itself being on its own, when the person feels oppression, and sometimes it feels even violence against himself on behalf of the governments and the community. That results in the violence that he produces in return.
And it's interesting because comparing what you just described amongst Russians feeling like orphans and contrasting that with what I think we see amongst Ukrainians, it seems to be a country that not only broke away from Russia economically and democratically and politically, but it seems like they have a culture that embraces one and all with love, as you're describing. And you live in Kyiv. Is that what you see?
Yeah, actually, you're very much on target here. That's one of the things that when I'm being asked by Ukrainian journalists and just by Ukrainian people, what do you feel is different in Ukraine from what you saw in Russia? And usually the first thing that I say is about the role of the family. In Ukraine, it's valued way, 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 way much higher than in Russia. In Russian, even there is such a phrase that is believed to be said by our famous writer Anton Chekhov, that when your wife cheats on you, you should be happy that it does not cheat on the motherland.
Say it again. You should be happy she does not cheat on
the motherland.
On the motherland. Oh, so we see the priority there.
Yes, yes. That is something that is that does not fit Ukrainian mindset. That's actually that has a lot of negative consequences as well, because the feeling of statehood in Ukraine is very low because of this. And actually, one of the sources of still famous Ukrainian corruption is also in this particular area. You value your family above the interest of the state. But obviously, it's way healthier what we see in Ukraine in this regards to what we see in Russia.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to ask you about today, there's been a lot of talk. I'm thinking about the New York Times. I'm thinking about Henry Kissinger. I'm thinking about some world leaders about this idea of appeasement. I want to explain for a minute what the word means. Basically, there is there are some voices out there who are saying Ukraine should end the war by giving some land to Putin. This is the idea of appeasement. You appease the aggressor. Ukraine, of course, and many, 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 many more around the world are saying, that's BS. That's Ukrainians in particular are saying, well, that is not happening. And they have many, many supporters around the world in that idea. But it seems to me, given what you've said here today and how you've described Russia and how a better Russia could be, the idea of appeasement is directly contradictory to the vision you're proposing, because it tells Mr. Putin and other world leaders it's okay to invade another country because you actually get rewarded in the end. Do you agree with that?
100%. I want to say to people who propose this, sorry for my French, but go fuck yourself.
Your French is appropriate here. So is it a surprise that this conversation about appeasement has come up, or within the Ukrainian ranks, has it been expected all along that at some point there would be voices advocating for this?
Well, I think that there are several origins why is all this happening and why such voices are heard. From one side, the former network of influencers of Russia in the Western world has gone nowhere. It still exists. They were silent because they were under duress. They were shocked by the invasion, but those people, they still exist. And it's very sad to say that Secretary Kissinger is one of them. He is one of people who are called one of foreign policy experts. Made a very accurate description of those people as Putin verstehers, those who understand Putin, understands in brackets. And unfortunately, they do spread this idea that, you should pacify the aggressor, you should pacify the dictator, it has to be a certain synthetic interest above not on the common sense, but on the common morale. Somebody killed somebody, but it's okay because he was more mighty. We should tolerate that. That's totally not my approach to life. Yeah. And neither of the overwhelming majority of Ukraine. At the end of the day, that is something for Ukrainians to decide. Whether they want to continue fighting or whether they want to stop where they are and make an agreement with Putin. But I right now see zero interest in Ukraine to concede any of Ukrainian territories to Putin. Right now, I see a overwhelming majority that desires to win the war, and I think that's a very understandable and the most realistic and pragmatic approach under these present circumstances. There is a second group of people in United States, which are not like Russian agents, which are not Putin verstehers, but those who are thinking about the upcoming elections. And there is a great phrase that was said once, I believe, by Winston Churchill, but I may be mistaken here, of the origin of the quote. But the phrase is that a politician is thinking about the upcoming elections, and the statesperson is thinking about his country. And I think that those voices in New York Times, they are thinking about the election. They're so much afraid that this narrow majority that Democrats have currently in the Senate would disappear, and that the Congress also could be lost to Republicans. And they are not thinking about the mistakes that they have made in their economic policies in general, but they want to put the blame on what's going on in Europe and saying, like we should stay away because that hurts our economy, that it's not we are who are at fault, but it's them who are at fault. And they hope that by doing this, they can get more votes in November. But I think it's a very short-sighted approach.
One of the questions I have for you, it seems to me that just this talk of appeasement, it's talk, and it's not coming from Ukraine, because as you've said, the majority of Ukrainians and the Ukrainian leadership completely 100% opposes this. That's my impression, and you've confirmed it. But it seems to me that anyone with some power of their voice, the New York Times, Henry Kissinger, any talk of appeasement from them can only be or will be used by Russians, by Mr. Putin, at least in Russia, as an affirmation for the war. So just the talk of it is damaging, even though the conversation or the talk is not coming from the Ukrainians themselves.
Well, look, thanks God we have freedom of speech here. And, whoever wants to say something, he can do this. It's not an official source. And the New York Times, even less Henry Kissinger, are the authentic voices of U.S. administration or any other country's administrations. So, if they want to express their opinion, let them do it. I think that they hurt their own reputation more than they actually hurt our common cause. The important thing is that to make sure that those who are actually making the decisions would not see this as some common voice, that it's not the voice of the majority, it's the voice of certain individuals, who express their own opinions. Let them do this.
Yeah. So what are you hearing from your contacts in Russia about the war today? I get a sense from looking at Twitter, reading news and things like that, including the New York Times, that there may be a shift in the thinking of the Russian people about the war. There may be some kind of growing tide in opposition of it, and a bit of courage in speaking out. Is that an accurate perception here in the West? Are you hearing those same things?
Frankly speaking, I don't hear like a public voice, and I cannot say that the pro-war group is somehow splitting apart and dissipating. But in general, a certain detergence of it is happening. And again, when we were talking to sociologists recently, they are confirming this. And I think that the next major sociological survey that is coming at the end of this month would show a further decline in the popular support for the war. But it's still a significant portion of the population that do support the war. Actually, I think that the most important thing at this very moment is the growing split within the elite. And this is not something that you would see in tweets or something, but this is something that you hear through gossip and through the private talks. Again, like after I made the tour in Londongrad and, in other European places, that's what I have heard many times from different Russians. That some of them, they think that they're somehow cornered with the sanctions and they don't know what to do. Like being in the West, they don't know what to do, and they're looking for an escape. But I also hear from people back home that are kind of passing a message that, we are ready to discuss with the West the conditions, for our, I wouldn't use the word defection, but that's probably the most accurate one.
Is your assessment still that this war has to end with the end of Mr. Putin and his life?
Definitely, yes. No, nothing has changed, and nothing can be changed in this in this regards. And this is something that Mr. Kissinger, where he's counterproductive in whatever he is saying. But at the same time, maybe I'm wrong here that he's counterproductive. Maybe he is productive because that's what many people are asking me and were asking actually during all my visits, is whether Vladimir Putin feels himself cornered because he can become dangerous when he's cornered. So when he hears such voices as the voice of Mr. Kissinger, it helps send him a message that he is not yet in the corner. And by not being in the corner, he would never use nukes or whatever, because he still may have certain illusions that he can escape. Of course, he is trapped already, and he is that guy already. But if he feels that he is not, that's a positive.
So you're describing three-dimensional chess here in a way, right? I mean, then we have to ask, is Mr. Kissinger saying what he's saying, not that he believes it, but because he wants Putin to not feel cornered, because that would make Putin more dangerous? And part of what you're saying here, if I understand correctly, is it's good that Mr. Putin does not feel cornered, because when he's cornered, he's going to do even more crazy things than he's already done. That's part of what you're saying here.
If he is cornered, for every person who is cornered, he may do different crazy things. But it's a different. The question is when this realization starts to get to you. Look at the example of Mr. Hitler. Just a couple of days before his suicide, he was still talking about some Wunderwaffe, that he still can win the war, and nobody already believed that he can win the war, but he's still like bragging that we can. And that's an ideal case scenario for Vladimir Putin, Vladimir feels the same way, but just let all people around him to understand that he's wrong.
Yeah. Letta says, looking forward to see who Putin is going to marry last minute. Okay, well, that's a whole other. But actually, Letta, I'm glad you put.
Let's make fast. that would be his escape. That would be his escape strategy. He would marry the hockey player Ovechkin, so that all the gay community would consolidate around him.
Oh my God,
Mr. Putin would be seen as a discrimination.
That's 4D chess. We just talked about three-dimensional chess. You're going into four-dimensional chess. So I actually want to close with some questions that came the last time you were with us, because we didn't get to ask them the last time you were here. So Maggie Thitt in the last show where you were here asked, we're hearing rumors about Putin being sick. I've heard these kind of ongoingly. Do you know anything? Do you think there's any truth to it? Do you know anything about it?
No, I think that him being sick is a real information, that he is sick, and there are a lot of indications that he is sick. But does it matter? I am not so sure. Yes, we know that with the modern medicine, with the modern healthcare, you can be sick for a very long time, and still stay alive. And for many people, I would say, thanks God. For Vladimir Putin, I would say, alas. But that's the reality. And so we shouldn't make our bets on him being sick, that he would be gone, and like we shouldn't do nothing. No, we should fight. And if by some miracle the gods would decide earlier than us, perfect.
Yes. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. All right. So Lily has just asked, do you consider, I'm not going to say his name right. Is it Medvedev?
Medvedev.
Yeah. Do you consider him any better? And Violetta and Watcher on the last show asked the same question. Actually, it was Watcher. What are the odds that Putin's successor will be just like him or worse? I mean, that has to be a concern here, right?
Yeah, it should be a concern for sure. And that's why I think that this process should not be left abandoned, that would happen by itself. Everybody who is concerned should be a part of this process.
Yes.
I think that this tree is already cut, but it didn't yet fall. And we need to make sure that it's falling in the right direction, that it does not kill anyone, when it would be falling. Yes, there are people which are worse, and there are people which are worse even within the opposition.
Yes.
And there are people who are progressive. There are people who are like Putin. There are people who are worse than Putin.
Yes.
Even within the liberal part of the opposition, some people I think are a good replacement, but some people I don't think are a good replacement. And there is not just the liberal opposition; there are other regiments of anti-Putin folks. But if we're speaking about like the palace coup and those who are at the high command, I think that actual competition on being Putin's successor would be between two people. It can be Medvedev or it can be Kiriyenko, the current first deputy chief of presidential staff. And I think that the better odds right now are with Kiriyenko, because he is the center of the interest of currently the most influential group of Putin's cronies, which is led by Yuri Kovalchuk. So I would pay more attention towards Kiriyenko. But the question is that whoever would be nominated by this Putin gang, I don't think that would be a sustainable solution, because I think that by the moment they would actually get enough courage to replace Putin with such a person, it would be too late. And that he would just not be able to consolidate power and prevent popular uprising. And who would be the leader of the popular rising? We will see.
Well, this is actually a great way for us to wrap this up, because how we started talking about this is conversations going on now about a better future for Russia, right? And it seems to me that as those conversations are happening, as you're having those conversations and others are having the conversations, even publicly, a better plan for a better Russia can arise, so that when there is no more Putin, there is somebody or a party or a team or a leadership group ready to step into that role and take Russia into the future instead of keeping it stuck in the past.
I fully agree, but Greg, let me answer Lily, saying that there is a doubt that there would be a coup in Russia. And I would say that right now I also have a lot of doubts. Because something like this is been driven by fear. It does not. The coup is driven not by a positive dream. Coup would be driven by fears that if not the coup, something like real catastrophic would actually happen, and that can be like military defeat, or it can be the confrontation with the West, a nuclear war, but most possible that it would be fear of the popular uprising.
Yes.
I think that is the precondition for the coup. And as soon as we will have enough signs that the wind is blowing in that direction, and some wind is starting going there, then we can have this discussion in a greater detail.
Yeah. All right. Well, and I hope we will, and soon.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to add before I let you go today?
I'm happy that I am back to Kiev and can talk to you guys normally, not on the run. I
Yeah.
hope that next week we will meet again, and let's keep up the good work. We very thankful for everybody who keeps donating to us and who helps us. That's all very visible, and that's very important.
And with that, you're bringing that up. I want to talk again for a moment about the Bravery Foundation, your Bravery Foundation. Lucy, Ina, they just made donations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'm going to put a link here. For anyone that wants to donate, you can just hit the button at the top of your screen with a $sign, or it says pay host on it. Everybody here has heard me say it before, but even though it says pay host and the hosts are Ilya and I, we're not being paid to be here. We're volunteers. Every dollar that you donate is going to the Bravery Foundation. And I just put a link to it as well that you can share with your friends and family. Do you want to just take a moment again to tell us what the Bravery Foundation is doing and why it's so important that we support it?
Yeah, definitely. The Bravery Foundation that we have established is the foundation that helps those Russians who decided to stop fighting, who stop being a part of this war machine. This is for soldiers who decided to defect. This is for government workers who decided to resign. These are for propaganda people that decided to publicly stand against this regime. They all, after they made their moves, they are facing persecution, they are facing oppression, they are facing a lot of life problems. And some of them we need to rescue by smuggling them out of the country. Some of them are getting arrested. We need to pay for the lawyers. Some of them just needs to be helped to settle down and find a new job. And that's what we are doing.
And the beauty of this is you're identifying people who are opposing the war inside of Russia. And actually, by supporting these people, you're disrupting pieces of the war effort, soldiers, members of the propaganda machine, etc.
Yeah, and we are showing that there are different Russians.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. All right, Ilya, thanks for being here today. I'm going to put the link to the Bravery Foundation in the chat again. Please share that with your friends and family. If you can hit the button above with the $sign or that says pay host and make a donation here, every dollar helps. And when you hit that button,